Every week we gather round, stories start to flow. Eric and Mark are on the mic, ready for the show.
Welcome, all our listeners, to the Seesaw scenario on the Eric and Mark Playground Rules podcast, and a special welcome to our special playground expert guests. There's an interesting article titled Iceberg of Ignorance, brought to the attention of the Eric and Mark Playground Rules podcast. It's interesting, and its primary claim and main topic seems to be in regards to safety and its management, and how certain key information may be lost on its way to the decision makers, i.e., known here on the playground as a playground executive. The final thoughts of this article stated that safety doesn't fail because people don't care. It fails when the truth is filtered and inaccurately stated. Again, for your consideration, the final thoughts of this article stated that safety doesn't fail because people don't care. It fails when the truth is filtered and inaccurately stated. Yes, there's merit to that in isolation and in context as with all truths. However, I'd like to propose a different nuance to the issue at hand as the following seesaw scenario. Well, I think that anybody with life experience could agree that truth is filtered and inaccurately stated as it goes to the top of any human organization, sometimes due to how people interpret information, but other times it seems that a lot of times this may happen as a protection against liability. Therefore, to say it is not for lack of caring as a blanket statement is where that stance seems to implicitly excuse the antics and intentions of organizational frontline supervision and what might be their motives and intentions. Of course, not all, but more than the playground seems to want to admit. In other words, saying that leaders make bad decisions because they don't have all the information may be the case sometimes, but by and large, this surmise excuses those leaders that make bad decisions because they don't care about anybody but themselves and their clique, and many times by virtue of current leadership selection practices, may not even be fit to be in the position they hold. The issue of leadership selection based on personality over character seems to always come up when talking about these things. Would it be fair to surmise to propose that many organizations have the issues they have as a reflection of the type of leadership that they have or do not have? In other words, as we all know, caring cannot be taught. It can only be inspired. The hypothetical question of the seesaw scenario is that if we were to study any random organization engaging in an obviously unsafe practice, could we surmise or assume, or after careful study conclude, that a leader that does not care about their employees is at the top? In other words, it would seem to be a fair assumption that if a leader in their nature doesn't truly care about the well-being of people in general, that character trait will bleed into how they feel about those they lead, and will logically then probably result in a careless approach, and consequently their safety protocols will probably be a reflection of the same. In light of that, should the article's last phrase more accurately read? Organizational safety oftentimes fails for two main reasons. Because people in the chain of leadership don't care about situations that will affect them personally, and other times because the truth is filtered, and by the time it reaches upper management, the playground executive, the truth is convoluted at best. Leading to the question, was that done on purpose to protect management and their organization, or was it a mere accident? The issue, therefore, seems to be that sometimes information falls through the cracks. After all, we are human. What is disturbing is the amount of fields that ignore safety concerns because they don't know better, don't care, or the issue doesn't affect them personally, until they result in injury or death. Something else to consider is sometimes the identification of safety issues by safety managers causes problems and fines, creating a less advantageous situation, making organizations have to decide between doing the right thing and getting in trouble, having to pay fines, or simply overlook it and say that the information must have fallen through the cracks. This seesaw scenario is a complex one. How say you, fellow playground experts?
Eric, so that's a very interesting article. To give people a little bit of a background on it, we're talking about the iceberg of ignorance, a concept that originated from a 1989 study by Sidney Yoshida, I believe is how you pronounce it. The study reveals a hard truth inside organizations. As information moves up the chain, from frontline employees up to executive leadership, most of it disappears, and that's what Eric said, but I just wanted to give people a little more information about where that came from, kind of a citation. So, there's some really good examples of this in society. For example, I don't know if it's still this way, but in Japan, I know that they were well known back in the day for, and I watched the documentary on this, for creating top quality products, and still are, especially like with cars and electronics and that kind of thing. The reason why that is because these people at, let's say, working on the front lines at the factory level, manufacturing, whatever it is, they're able to give direct feedback to the highest levels of the organization, to the top executives. And what ends up happening as a result, the top executives get the feedback from the frontline people directly. And not only that, but then the manufacturers, the frontline people in the production or the factories, they have higher morale going to work because they feel that what they're suggesting often manifests itself as actual changes, right? They feel like they're able to make a difference. Why do we feel, so to that point, why do we feel sometimes disenchanted, or why do we feel, why do we feel discouraged? Because we feel like nothing that we do or say makes a difference, and we're always going to be in the same situation. This is a really important concept to illustrate. In that case, those people, they've been able to make a direct impact on the product, and not only to contribute to making that product physically or inventing it, but also to be heard by the executive leadership directly. I don't think that happens enough in American organizations. All the organizations that I've worked in, at least to some degree, I would say just about every organization. I actually think of a few counterexamples with smaller companies, but yeah, bigger organizations, they're not hearing from the executive levels of leadership, CEO, CIO, etc., CFO are not hearing from people who have regular, desk jobs or, manufacturing or warehouse or production jobs or that kind of thing within the organization. And I think that they should do that more often. I think that should happen, at least several times per year, and people need to make time for that. I've noticed that even like when you have town hall meetings and that kind of thing, the CEO and the higher levels of management will give a presentation. They say, okay, well, if you have any questions or if you have any feedback, please let your supervisors know, kind of thing. They're kind of saying, well, we don't want to hear from you directly, or we're not able to hear from you directly. So I believe that this happens for one of several reasons, okay? Well, let's start out with the functionality of it. When you have a big organization, it's hard to talk to everybody on a regular basis and hear from them on a regular basis and have a meaningful exchange. So I understand that. In the interest of time, you can't always do it, but maybe people should find time, to do that in higher levels of management several times per year. But then I'm going to break down three other reasons why I think that this happens. Number one, and they're along the lines of what you said, Eric. Number one is because it is absolutely like intentional. The lower levels of management, maybe on the supervisory or managerial level, by the time it gets up to the executive branch of the company, they've already maybe applied their own filters. Like, yeah, you know what? This is the part that I want the higher up management to hear, and this is the part I don't want them to hear, or let me go ahead and put my own spin on it, kind of deliver it and that kind of thing. And they do that intentionally. Maybe it's not malicious, but maybe they think it's for the best interests of the group or of the team or of that individual, but they will intentionally put their spin on it. And I've seen that happen in many situations, okay? Another situation, it could be just a misunderstanding. It is absolutely possible to misunderstand or misconstrue unintentionally what somebody said, and miscommunications do happen. But the thing is that this would happen less, again, if the executive branch of the company was hearing more from people at the lower rungs of the organizational chain, okay? And then number three, like you said, I know it sounds pretty cynical, it is possible that people just don't care. They want to pay you to do a specific job, okay, and in certain organizations or departments, and they want a minimum amount of pushback or feedback based on you doing that job. Come to work, do your job. The less I hear from you, the better off we are, and go home after that. I know that sounds tough. I'm pretty sure that a lot of managers at different companies feel that way. Fortunately, I've been working at two companies in recent years that it has not been that way, where my feedback to my managers, and even in one case to the owner of a company, translated to actual results where I was actually my feedback was sought, or it was solicited. So that was great. So that improves my value with the team and my value at work, my morale. But in a lot of cases, I felt like, hey, people, they just didn't care, or my messages were unintentionally misconstrued. So that's where I stand on it. I'd love to hear how everybody else feels about it in the comments.